Engaged, she accepted her ex's proposal and they married. But when everything fell apart, she came back full of remorse. I showed her that decisions have consequences. Hello, everyone. My name is Adam. I'm 31 years old, and I work as an electrician. I've been doing this for about 8 years now. It's a stable job with a good salary. Until recently, I was engaged to Chloe, 29, a physical therapist who worked at an exclusive sports medicine clinic downtown. We had been together for 4 years, living together for the last 2. We got engaged in February, and everything seemed to be going well. We started talking about the wedding. She wanted to have it in the autumn of the following year, in a large church with a reception at a country club. I was fine with that. My parents adored her, and her family seemed to get along with me. Everything was on track until the unthinkable happened. That day I was working at a construction site, installing electrical wiring in an office building. It was a long, exhausting shift, one of those that leaves you covered in dust after crawling through narrow ceilings with obsolete wiring. I got home around 6 p.m., completely wiped out. All I wanted was a hot shower and something to eat. I immediately noticed something strange. Chloe's car was in the driveway, which surprised me since she usually stayed late on Tuesdays for administrative meetings with other therapists, or so she had always told me. I walked into the house and found her sitting on the sofa, still in her work clothes. But there was something different in her expression. She seemed uneasy, as if she was about to tell me something important, but didn't know how. That kind of look someone has when they're about to drop unexpected news, a pregnancy, a promotion, or something similar. I dropped my tool bag by the entrance, and before I could say anything, she looked at me intently and blurted out, "Adam, can we talk? I need to tell you something." That tone, the tone that you know spells trouble. "Sure, tell me." She took a deep breath and said it bluntly. "Ethan proposed to me today." Just like that, out of the blue, with no context. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. Something weird that had happened at work or something she saw on social media, but she wasn't smiling. She looked at me seriously, waiting for my reaction. And that's when my mind started connecting the dots. Ethan, her high school ex-boyfriend. I'd heard his name once, but I always assumed he was part of the past. I asked her how long she had been seeing him. She replied, "For a while." A while meant they had been seeing each other since March, 2 months after our engagement. It wasn't a chance encounter or a casual message. These were planned, scheduled meetings, while I was working overtime to pay for the engagement ring, and we were jointly looking for wedding venues. She was secretly seeing her adolescent ex, and when he proposed, she accepted. I felt the air leave my lungs. She was standing in front of me with my ring on her finger, telling me she was going to marry someone else. Then everything clicked. The late nights weren't for work. They were dates with Ethan. The mysterious calls weren't patience. They were for him. The new makeup, the clothes she claimed were to look more professional. It was all for him. The emotional coldness wasn't stress about the wedding. It was because she wasn't in love with me anymore. I said, "Take off my ring." "Adam, let me explain." "Take off the ring." Chloe slowly did it and placed it on the coffee table. 3 months of my salary, lying there as if they meant nothing. "You have 1 hour to pack your bags and leave." 1 hour, Adam. Please, let's talk." There was nothing left to say. She had already made her decision. I called my sister from my truck, my hands shaking. Victoria wanted to come over, but I just needed Chloe to disappear from my space, my life, and my future. 45 minutes later, she came out with 2 suitcases and told me that maybe with time, we could be friends. Friends. After destroying a 4-year relationship for a nostalgic adolescent fantasy, she got into her car and drove away. That was the end of it. I went back inside and felt the house was empty, lifeless. The ring was still where she left it. I put it back in its box and placed it in a dresser drawer. I didn't know what else to do with it. The following days were incredibly tough. I took a few days off because I couldn't concentrate at work. I almost electrocuted myself twice on Tuesday. I was so disconnected from everything that I was a danger even to myself. My supervisor sent me home after seeing me trip over the same ladder 3 times. At home, everything reminded me of her. Her favorite mug in the cupboard, the blanket she always used, still folded on the sofa. Small traces that suddenly felt like daggers to the memory. And if that wasn't enough, her family started writing to me. Less than 24 hours later, I received a message from her mother. "Adam, I know this is difficult, but Chloe has found her soulmate. Ethan was always the love of her life. I hope you can understand and be happy for them. Be happy after 4 years." Then her father left me a long voicemail saying that things happen for a reason, that Ethan and Chloe have a deep bond, a real history from their youth, that I seemed like a good guy, but sometimes love just finds its way, as if my commitment had been worthless. Her sister also wrote to me, saying she had never seen her as happy as she was with Ethan, that they were meant for each other, that true love always wins, as if I had been the obstacle in their fairy tale. Nobody apologized. No one acknowledged that what she did was cruel. They all celebrated their true love as if I hadn't existed, as if I were nothing more than a replaceable bystander. I blocked every single one of them. Social media, phones, emails. I didn't want their false pity or their twisted excuses contaminating my mind anymore. My parents, for their part, were devastated. My mother cried when I told her everything. She was already planning what she was going to wear to the wedding. My father was furious. He asked several times if I wanted him to go talk to Ethan. I had to calm him down. I didn't need my almost 60-year-old father to get arrested for getting me revenge that wouldn't give me anything back, although deep down, I appreciated the impulse. My sister Victoria was a real lifesaver throughout this process. She would show up every few days with takeout food, making sure I was at least eating something decent and not just any junk I had in the pantry. She would sit with me while I vented everything I was holding inside. She didn't try to give advice or magical solutions. She just listened, nodded, and told me that Chloe was trash. The best thing about Victoria was that she wasn't surprised by anything that was happening. She confessed that she had noticed strange behavior from Chloe for months but hadn't wanted to say anything without proof. She recalled how Chloe would zone out every time someone mentioned engagement or marriage, as if her mind disconnected from the moment. She also helped me start packing up everything Chloe had left behind. It's incredible how much a person can accumulate in 4 years. Creams and jars in the bathroom, forgotten clothes she didn't manage to take when she abruptly left, books and magazines scattered throughout the house. We put everything in boxes and left them at her sister's house without saying a single word. Work also served as a distraction. My colleagues noticed something major had happened, but no one pryed into my affairs. In this line of work, no one talks much about feelings, which, honestly, was exactly what I needed. 3 weeks later, I saw the engagement announcement. Professional photos in some park downtown. She and him, Ethan, her high school ex, smiling as if the entire universe conspired in their favor. And the ring was bigger than the one I had given her. It shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. A classic move. She had to one-up me as if it were a competition. The comments on the post were worse. Destiny. True love always finds a way. What a beautiful reunion. As if they were celebrating a grand love story instead of the ruin of my relationship. I started to think that maybe I had dodged a bullet. If someone can leave behind 4 years of shared life for an old adolescent love, perhaps she was never truly ready to commit. It hurt, yes, but better to find out before a wedding than after 5 years and 2 kids. Victoria kept reminding me that it said much more about Chloe's character than mine, that I deserved someone who didn't doubt, who saw commitment as something valuable, not something you discard as soon as a better offer appears. She was right, but understanding it didn't make the pain less intense. When someone you love decides you're not enough, no logic can serve as comfort. After the announcement, I stopped looking at social media. I wasn't interested in following the fairy tale they were building on the remains of what had been my story. I started to concentrate on my life. Work remained stable. I took on a few extra well-paid projects, and I felt my head was finally back in place. Until yesterday, I received a message that made me doubt if I was living in an alternate reality where people had completely lost their minds. Chloe, the woman who destroyed a 4-year relationship to get back with her high school ex, had the audacity to ask me for money for her wedding. And no, it's not a joke. I'll explain this calmly because I still find it hard to process. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. It took me a moment to realize it was her, probably using a different phone, because I had blocked her everywhere months ago. The message was short. "Hi, Adam. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to talk to you about something important." My first reaction was to block her again, but curiosity got the better of me. I thought that with everything that had already happened, she couldn't do any more damage, so I replied, asking what she wanted. And that's when she left me speechless. She told me that she and Ethan were organizing their wedding for the following month, but they were short on budget, and she asked if I could help them financially. Just like that, straight up. It wasn't a loan. It was simply asking for money for them to get married. To each other. After she had left me for him. I had to read it 3 times to be sure I had understood correctly. This woman ruined our relationship, traded me for another man, and now expected me to contribute to her wedding expenses. The same wedding that, a few months ago, would have been ours, and the best, or worst part came next. She clarified, "Ethan doesn't know I'm asking you this, so don't worry." As if the fact that she was hiding this from her fiancé was a comfort to me. As if I should be reassured that he didn't know his future wife was asking her ex for money to celebrate their union. The audacity was astounding. It was evident she saw me as a simple ATM to turn to when things got difficult. I stared at the phone for about 10 minutes, trying to figure out if this was a sick joke or if one of her friends was pulling my leg. But no. The tone was completely serious. She genuinely thought this was a reasonable thing to do. I wanted to call her, yell at her how crazy she was, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of getting that reaction. So, instead, I asked her why she thought I, of all possible people, would want to help them pay for their wedding. Her answer was even worse than the request. She told me that we had shared 4 years together and she knew I was a good person. Someone who wanted others to be happy, that even if things hadn't worked out between us, she hoped I would want her to have the wedding of her dreams. Because according to her, that's what noble people do. They support the happiness of their exes, even if it hurts them. It was such blatant manipulation that it was almost offensive. She wanted to make me feel guilty, as if saying no would turn me into a heartless egoist instead of a person with some dignity. And then she mentioned what I had earned recently with my extra jobs. That's when I got alarmed. How on earth did she know that? Was she talking to my friends? Had she been spying on me through social media? Either option was worrying. She said that Ethan's construction company wasn't going through a good time and that they had already paid some deposits to vendors they didn't want to lose, that they only needed a few thousand to cover what was missing, that she would always fondly remember that I had helped them at that moment. A few $1,000s for the wedding she chose to have with another man. The same man she chose over me. In the end, I decided to reply, though I made it clear that she must have completely lost her mind if she truly believed I was going to give her a single cent, let alone to finance their wedding. How could she ask me for something like that? Asking her ex-fiancé for money to start a new life with another man was, without a doubt, one of the most absurd things I had ever heard. Her reaction was immediate, and, just as I expected, she got defensive. She told me she was only asking because she knew I cared about her happiness, that she thought I would be mature enough to get over our breakup and help her as a friend. According to her, breaking my heart gave her the right to continue counting on my financial support, as if her happiness was my eternal responsibility. I replied that she should delete my number and never look for me again. I told her that if she was short on money for her wedding, maybe she should turn to her family, the same one that so celebrated her decision to leave me, or even better, that Ethan should step up and find a way to pay for the event instead of allowing his fiancée to ask her ex for financial help. She insisted one more time, accusing me of being resentful, of not having moved on, and said that if I had really turned the page, helping her would prove that I didn't hold a grudge. More manipulation disguised as emotional maturity. I didn't reply. I simply blocked her number and went on with my day, but I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. What kind of person, months after ruining a relationship, believes their ex will be willing to pay for their new beginning? And the worst part of all was how naturally she had made that request, not a single word acknowledging how inappropriate it was. Not an apology for putting me in that position. Nothing, just that attitude of someone who expects that. Because we shared a history, I should continue opening my wallet every time she was short on money, as if our history gave her lifetime access to my resources. It made me wonder what other boundaries she would be willing to cross if she ran out of money. Would she ask me to babysit her children someday? To help pay the mortgage? To co-sign a loan when Ethan's business went under? The arrogance was stunning. We were together for 4 years, and she learned nothing about who I am if she really thought I would finance her wedding to another man. At least now I'm clear that leaving that relationship was the best thing that could have happened to me. I can't imagine living with someone who has such a distorted idea of what's right and what's not. As if all that weren't enough, last week, my sister Victoria finished telling me the rest of the story. She had already heard rumors from mutual friends, but waited to have all the information before telling me. It turns out that Chloe and Ethan's perfect love story lasted exactly 6 months. Apparently, he was unfaithful to her from the beginning. And I'm not talking about an occasional fling, but parallel relationships with several women at the same time. He was dating 3 different women, each believing she was the only one. One of them discovered what was happening and decided to expose everything. She contacted Chloe directly and sent her screenshots, photos on dates, and even videos. Solid proof. Impossible to deny. When she confronted him, Ethan didn't even try to lie. He just told her that he wasn't ready to commit and that she should never have expected fidelity from him, as if being unfaithful was something she should have accepted from the start. And that wasn't the most serious part. The situation worsened when they argued in their apartment. They started shouting, and everything got out of control when Chloe said she would leave him. He grabbed her so tightly that he left marks on her arms. When she tried to leave, he pushed her against the wall, making her hit her head. She ended up with a black eye. The neighbors heard the screams and called the police. According to Victoria, it wasn't the first time he had become violent. Chloe had been hiding bruises for weeks, giving excuses about silly accidents or falls at work. Typical behaviors of someone being abused who doesn't know how to ask for help. It's impressive to see how it all unfolded. Just half a year ago, she left our stable 4-year relationship for the fantasy of getting back with her youthful love. She traded everything we had built for an illusion that only existed in her mind, and what she received in return was half a year of lies, betrayal, and violence. Ethan only saw an opportunity to have fun with an old girlfriend, regardless of the consequences. And when he got tired, he showed who he really was. I can't say I'm glad about what happened to her. No one deserves to be abused. But I do feel vindicated. She chose emotion over stability, impulse over trust. She chose her first love, ignoring the man who truly loved her. And now she has to live with the consequences. The worst part is how he is handling all this. Instead of repenting or seeking help for his problems, he continues to justify his behavior. He tells mutual friends that Chloe was too intense, that the relationship wasn't working anymore. He doesn't mention the infidelities or the violence. He poses as the victim of a crazy ex-girlfriend who couldn't handle his free spirit. The typical abuser's move, presenting himself as the sane one while the other person tries to rebuild among the rubble. Now Chloe is living with her parents, facing the fact that her soulmate turned out to be a nightmare. The very same parents who encouraged her to leave me now have to watch their daughter try to put her life back together. Suddenly, they are not so enchanted with Ethan. It seems that being cheated on and hit changes one's opinion of someone. Where did all that talk about destiny and true love go? That same family that celebrated her leaving her fiancé for an old flame is now seeing the result of that choice. And the most curious thing, several mutual friends have started asking about me. People who remember how our relationship ended and wonder how I'm handling all this. I told Victoria to tell them the truth, that I'm fine, and that I've moved on, because it's true. A few months ago, I started dating someone new. Her name is Jasmine, and she is the complete opposite of Chloe. Jasmine knows what happened, but she doesn't make it a problem or a competition. She recognizes it was a painful experience, but focuses on building something beautiful with me, without drama or mind games, exactly what I needed. What I have now is totally different from what I experienced before. With the person I'm currently dating, we have decided to take things slowly, with no pressure, building something real and making every decision cautiously. An approach that seems logical now, especially after seeing how Chloe ruined her life chasing a romantic fantasy that was destined to fail from the start. The difference between my present and the disaster Chloe is facing couldn't be more evident. While I'm building something solid with someone who genuinely wants to be with me, she's dealing with the consequences of having chosen drama over stability. Sometimes the best way to move on is not to take revenge, but simply to live well while the other person deals with the chaos they sowed. Chloe was looking for excitement, something different from what she considered a boring life. And boy, did she get excitement, though not the kind she imagined. And, as expected, she started trying to return to my life. It all began a couple of weeks after my sister Victoria told me what had happened to her. My phone started ringing with unknown numbers. I thought it was work calls or spam, so I let them go to voicemail. Big mistake. The first message was from Chloe. Her voice was completely broken, crying, barely articulating words between sobs. She said she needed to talk to me urgently, that she had made a huge mistake and truly required my help. I didn't finish listening to the message. I deleted it immediately. She was no longer my problem. She had made a decision 8 months ago when she chose to be with Ethan instead of me. The consequences of that choice were not my responsibility, but the calls continued, each time from a different number, as if she were borrowing phones from friends or using apps to create temporary numbers. Sometimes she called several times a day, and since I no longer answered unknown numbers, all those attempts ended up in the voicemail. The messages became more desperate as the days passed. First, there were apologies, recognizing she had made a mistake, that what we had was genuine and valuable, and that she had let it go for a lie. Then she started talking about Ethan, the hell she had lived through with him, that he had lied to her from the beginning, that he cheated on her with several women, that he made her feel like a fool, that he became aggressive when she tried to break up, and that now she was afraid of what he might do to her. Each new message escalated in tone. Chloe assured me that she finally understood that I was the good guy in the story, that Ethan showed her everything that love shouldn't be, and that made her value what she had with me. She called leaving me her biggest mistake. She said she had been naive to be carried away by adolescent feelings instead of recognizing what a mature and true love was. It was a clear attempt at manipulation. She positioned herself as a redeemed victim and tried to present me as the savior she had unjustly despised. And then, as expected, came the pleas to try again. She said she knew she had hurt me, but everyone makes mistakes, that now she was different, that she knew what really mattered in a relationship. She was the same woman who secretly maintained contact with her ex for months while we organized our wedding. The same one who preferred an illusion to an honest life, and when that illusion turned into a nightmare, now she came looking for me, hoping I would rescue her. The messages got longer. She talked for minutes about the things she missed about our relationship, the tranquility, the trust, the security. She said I never made her feel less, that with Ethan she lived in constant anxiety, that she missed our apartment, coming home and finding me happy to see her, that Ethan's place always seemed cold to her, as if she wasn't truly welcome there. Some messages stopped being sad and became furious. She accused me of being cruel, of not responding to a person who was clearly in a critical situation, that I was holding a grudge instead of showing maturity and compassion for someone who, according to her, should still matter to me. And that, frankly, made me laugh. The same woman who destroyed our relationship was now outraged because I wouldn't help her climb out of the hole she had dug for herself. She asked me for emotional support after having left me for someone else. It was surreal. The calls started coming at any time of the day. Late at night, surely when she was drunk and regretful. First thing in the morning, when she remembered the life she had lost. In the afternoon, when something brought back memories. I started keeping my phone on silent mode, just to avoid the constant ringing. Jasmine, the woman I'm dating now, noticed something was stressing me out. I told her about the calls and she suggested changing my number. At first I resisted. It seemed absurd to have to change my contact information just because my ex didn't know how to take no for an answer. But Jasmine was right. My peace of mind was worth more than proving something to Chloe. The calls were affecting me even without answering them. Coming home and seeing 6 missed calls from someone who only wanted me to fix her life was exhausting. But before I could change my number, everything stopped. I didn't receive any more calls for almost a week. The longest stretch since all this had begun. I thought she had finally understood that I wasn't going to respond. Or maybe she had found someone else willing to shoulder her problems. But I was wrong. Chloe hadn't given up. She was just preparing her next move. It was Saturday morning. Jasmine had stayed over, as was now usual. We were even talking about moving in together and looking for a bigger place. Everything was going well. No rush, but in a good direction. I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast while she was showering. Then someone started banging on the front door hard. It wasn't a simple knock. It was like there was an emergency, as if the building was about to collapse. I peered through the peephole. Chloe was there with her mother, both looking a mess. Chloe had cried so much that her makeup was smeared, her hair was tangled, and she wore a giant sweatshirt that seemed to say she had given up on everything. Her mother had a tense, determined expression. She was the same woman who, months ago, had written to me saying her daughter had found her soulmate, and now she was standing at my entrance, helping her try to salvage what was left of that decision. I didn't open the door. They kept banging, each time more insistently. Through the wood, I could hear Chloe begging me to please talk to her for at least 5 minutes. Her mother, more direct, pointed out that my truck was in the driveway, so they knew I was home. At that moment, Jasmine came down the stairs wearing one of my t-shirts, her hair still damp and with a calm smile. Completely oblivious to the chaos on the other side of the door, she asked me who was making so much noise. I told her it was my ex and her mother, and before I could stop her, Jasmine went straight to open the door. The knocking on the door immediately ceased. Chloe's face changed several times in a matter of seconds. First, surprise at seeing that it wasn't me who answered, then confusion at seeing a woman she didn't know, and finally, an expression of anger when she understood what was happening. Her mother was also surprised, though she managed to hide it more successfully. Jasmine handled the situation flawlessly. She was serene, polite, but firm in explaining that I was not available. She didn't let herself be dragged into the drama, nor did she feel the need to give unnecessary explanations. She simply stated the facts clearly. I walked over to Jasmine and placed a hand on her shoulder. Upon seeing me, Chloe's expression changed drastically. Her gaze reflected relief, as if my mere presence would solve all her problems. She immediately started talking, saying that she had been trying to contact me for weeks, that we needed to talk about everything that had happened. She confessed through tears that leaving me for Ethan had been the biggest mistake of her life. Her mother quickly intervened, offering her own version of the story. She said that Chloe had gone through hell with Ethan, that he wasn't who he pretended to be. Curious how, in an instant, Ethan went from being Chloe's soulmate to a toxic figure. And that same woman who used to tell me they were the perfect couple now acted as if she had never supported that relationship. How convenient, I replied with short, direct phrases. I was not going to allow them to manipulate me emotionally or try to make me feel guilty for what once was. Chloe looked alternately at Jasmine and me, incredulous that I had moved on. She asked us how long we had been together, and couldn't hide her surprise upon learning that only 10 months had passed since she had left me for her ex. Then she brought up the usual speech, that what we had was real, that with Ethan there was only confusion and nostalgia, that our relationship had solid foundations and was not a fairy tale like her failed attempt at reconnection. But it's too late, I replied clearly. What we had is in the past. It ended the day you chose someone else over me. Her mother tried another tactic, appealing to my character. She described me as a good man. She told me that Chloe had learned from her mistake and asked if I couldn't give her another chance. I clarified that I had already forgiven her, but for my own peace of mind. Forgiving doesn't mean getting back into a relationship. Forgiving is letting go of the anger, not allowing someone to hurt you again. Chloe, increasingly desperate, wanted to know why I refused even to try again. I told her the truth. I no longer trust you. You showed me your true colors when things got complicated, and that person was capable of abandoning what we had for an adolescent impulse. When she tried to justify herself by saying she was confused, I interrupted her. It wasn't confusion, it was selfishness. You wanted to keep me as a second option while you checked if Ethan was better than me. And when everything went wrong, you came back expecting me to receive you with open arms. She started crying inconsolably, begging for another chance, saying that everyone makes mistakes. I reminded her that she had already had her chance. 4 years together, an engagement ring. You threw all that away for 6 months with Ethan. When she described that period as a nightmare, I pointed out that it was not my responsibility to fix the results of her choices. Her mother made one last attempt. Are you really unwilling to consider getting back with someone who has understood what she lost? I replied that Chloe hadn't understood what she lost, but rather discovered that her plan B was safer than her first option. And that's not the same thing. Throughout the entire conversation, Jasmine remained by my side. She didn't need to say anything. Her mere presence was enough. She answered their questions about our relationship honestly, without getting defensive or acting jealous. Her attitude was mature and firm. Chloe began to let her anger show when she noticed that I had truly moved on. I let her see that I had moved on after she left me. That's what happens when someone chooses another person over you. When she tried to play the guilt card about our 4 years together, I responded that for me, they meant a lot, until she decided Ethan meant more. I looked at those 2 women standing in front of my door, one who destroyed what we had for a fantasy, and another who supported her decision until everything collapsed. 10 months ago, I would have done anything for Chloe. I would have married her. We would have built a life together. I gave her my complete trust. Today, she was nothing more than a person from my past, someone who made bad decisions and now wanted me to carry the consequences. I told them no, simple as that, and that denial hit them hard. Chloe crumbled, and her mother was paralyzed as if I had slapped her. They stayed there for 1 more minute, perhaps waiting for me to change my mind or invite them to continue talking. But there was nothing left to say. Chloe had chosen, she lived the consequences, and now she intended to erase them. But life doesn't work that way. They returned to the car in silence. Jasmine closed the door calmly and locked it without saying a word. Then she looked at me, as if wanting to confirm that everything was all right. I nodded. I didn't feel angry, sad, or agitated. On the contrary, there was a strange calm in my chest, as if a chapter that I had been dragging on for too long had finally closed. What had just happened did not leave me with doubts or regrets. Rather, it left me with a simple and powerful certainty. I was no longer the same man she left behind. Chloe thought she could return when it suited her, that I would be waiting for her as a guarantee of stability after she had played with her past. But she was wrong. It wasn't about pride or revenge. It was clarity. I had understood that love is not begged for, and much less is it recovered when it has been replaced without a second thought. Jasmine didn't need to comfort me. Her mere presence spoke volumes. What she represents in my life today is not a comparison to what I had, but a demonstration of what I truly deserve. A relationship built on sincerity, not regret. I watched through the window as the car drove away down the street. I felt neither pity nor anger. I simply closed the curtains, turned to Jasmine, and asked her if she was hungry. She smiled, and just like that, without the need for grand words, we moved on. Because sometimes you don't have to look back to know you made the right decision.